Well, here we are in January 2023, and it doesn't seem like 12 months since I was producing this video to go out with our reviews in January of 2022. Whilst much has happened over the last 12 months, it hardly seems like anything has really changed over the last little period. When we look back, we could see that in January 22 we were still very uncertain about what was going to happen with the impacts of COVID-19 and how that was going to affect world economies. And we really haven't got any further information as to how that's going to play out over the next little while, and indeed over the longer period. In fact, in some parts of the world it seems like COVID is now worse than it was at this time last year. In March of 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. That unsettled us all, not least the poor citizens of that country who've experienced some terrible atrocities over the last period, and we don't know how that's going to play out either. At this time last year, we were also starting to hear rumblings about the impacts of inflation and what world central banks were going to do to try and counter those effects. Certainly, we've experienced over the last 12 months some rises in interest rates around the world, but there is some indication at the present stage that maybe some of those effects are going to be tempered, and that we're starting to come to the end of the rate rising cycle. Time will tell. By coincidence, the Australian share market, as measured by the ASX 200, is almost exactly where it was 12 months ago. That is at around about 7,400, but it did fall to as low as 6,400 in June. International markets have had a bumpier ride, so the MSCI index is actually down about 15% from where it was last year. But we have to remember that in January of 2022, that particular index was at all-time highs. So it has come off slightly from where it was this time last year, but certainly it's by no means a catastrophe. As well as my crystal ball will tell me, I would anticipate some continued volatility in markets. All of these factors have impacts which will continue to make uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds volatility. Whilst interest rates may be coming to an end, the full effect of those interest rate rises in the Australian economy anyway has not yet been felt. There's certainly been some impact on property prices, but we're really not sure how that's going to play out through the wider economy, particularly as some levels of mortgage stress start to impact upon people who've borrowed in recent years and perhaps stretched themselves a little bit further than they should have. No one can tell what's going to happen in Ukraine, and I fear that COVID is going to be with us probably for the long term, if not forever. So none of those things are going away, and that's going to continue to provide some stresses and strains on world share markets, and continued volatility is to be expected. Of course, our job is to make sure that you're well positioned for these times and for any other times, and we continue to do that. Diversification is always the key. Remaining invested unless you actually particularly need to make withdrawals of funds is always the best solution. Look forward to talking to you again soon.